order. And then why don't we do a roll call? Kelly, you want to kick us off?
Kelly Toon here.
Tracy Anderson here.
Larry Stone here.
Ken Halliday here. And then, let's see, we don't have Kenneth. That's right. Why don't we do the Pledge of Allegiance?
Okay.
So like this one, David, she shows a flag on the screen.
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I've never been that close.
How about that? The first order of business, or first item, is the approval of the regular agenda, which was circulated. Everybody's had a chance to take a look at it. We've got a couple of business items and then a discussion item. Are there any adjustments or amendments to the agenda? If not, I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda for May 21st.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. The next item is the approval of our minutes from our last meeting. Again, those were, hi Kenneth, I see you just joined us. Thanks for being with us. We have also on the screen, Kenneth, David Ford, who's the property owner, who's requested the continuance. And appreciate you joining. I know it's tough when you've got a work schedule like you do.
Hey, Kenneth.
Yeah.
He looks a little frozen.
So everybody's had a chance to take a look at the minutes from our last meeting. Are there any amendments or edits to the minutes? If not, I'm looking for an approval, a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from, what was it, April 16th.
Yep.
I can second that.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay. So the minutes are approved. Next item is, are there any conflicts of interest that we need to discuss or declare as it relates to this agenda? We know that that you'll need to step out just when we consider the continuance, Tracy. But other than that, is there anything else we need to discuss on the conflict side?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Now on the agenda is when we open it for any public comment. Is there anybody from the public? David, obviously, if you wanted to make a comment, you could, but since it's just a continuance today, you don't feel like you need to. Is there anybody from the public that would like to make a comment?
On items that are not on tonight's agenda.
Thank you. Sorry. On items that are not on tonight's agenda. That's what we love about Madison. She keeps us
Keeps everybody in
on
line.
track. Yeah. Thank you, Madison.
Of course. There is no one online and nobody from the audience who appears to want to speak.
Okay, great. So we'll move on from public comments to any special presentations, of which there are none tonight, correct?
That's correct.
And that gets us down to the business item, which the first item is 478 Eagle River Street, the request for continuance. And I think Tracy, Madison's probably going to tell you now is the time that you got to step out. It shouldn't be long. Thank you.
Since you are the applicant, you can just move into the audience. That's perfectly fine. Okay, so this is fairly straightforward. We received a nomination application and staff endeavored to, get this on an agenda as quickly as possible so that the process could get started. However, after discussion with the property owner and his concern about wanting to just focus on his upcoming marriage and honeymoon, he has requested that we move this to the June 18th meeting. I talked with, or I emailed with Tracy, and she was okay with moving it to the July. So I'm hoping she's still okay with moving it to the June meeting. But that is the request submitted before you today.
Okay, great. Do we want to invite any comments from David at this time, or do we just see if there's a discussion among the commissioners?
You can do both if you so choose.
David, if you want to make any comment, you're welcome to. I think it's pretty straightforward. We know you're getting married on June 1st, correct?
Yes, we're getting married June 1, Ken, and, Lily and I just,
Have a
Just
few
have-
things.
yeah, we just want to focus on the two of us and our wedding and the ceremony and our friends and family, and just, would ask that we could continue this to the June 18th hearing.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? Any commissioners want to jump in with any comments, questions?
So I apologize. I was absent last meeting. I was actually down in Belize. The only connection I know about the property was Mike was one of the first people to go down to Belize, and I was friends of him when he was alive, and I have been in the house a couple of times during while he was alive, and I know, it's, to me, the building's very, very rustic, and he was an artist, and God, I don't know, it's hard to say. I mean, I'd love to.
Can I interrupt you just for a second? Because I don't know where you're going to go with it, but we're not going to discuss the merits tonight. It's just a
Okay.
question of whether we continue this, meaning what that means is that we would not discuss the merits tonight. Instead, we would move
Okay,
it to
sorry.
the next meeting June 18th. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I kind of thought maybe you didn't catch
Oh, yeah.
that.
Okay.
So it's
My
just a
bad.
question on the continuance. Is there any discussion on moving this? Hi, Larry. I just see you popped up. Whether there's any discussion on the continuance tonight, and then we'll get into the merits on June 18th.
Okay. For some reason, I thought it was being continued till now. Or,
Oh, no,
okay.
no, no.
Yeah. I was confused. Sorry.
Yeah, it's been confusing because you were out, but Madison, did I say all that correctly?
You did, thank you.
Okay, great.
You have no problem then.
Okay, anybody else have a comment? If not, I'm looking for a motion to approve the request for continuance to June 18th.
I motion
Yeah.
to move the continuance to June 18th.
I just had a quick comment just to,
Oh, sorry.
for record, sir. So my only point is, we don't see anybody contesting it. I was positioned here to represent the public. And since we don't have any public opposition, I certainly don't have any opposition. And that's kind of just where my mentality is on continuances. I just wanted to get that out there as being how I will approach them, that I will be prepared to continue at any time we don't hear from anybody else that I don't consider there's a nexus between not continuing, and that's just what I wanted to record.
Okay, thank you for that. Always appreciate it when you bring your experience to the table like that. Okay, so do we have a motion on the table? Was there a motion made?
So moved.
Okay, so it's a motion to continue to June 18th, correct?
Correct.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, and all in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, so the motion for continuance carries. And now we'll invite Tracy back into the room. Thank you, David. You're certainly welcome to stick around if you'd like. And we're going to move on to some other business. Our next business item is the series 2024 amending chapter 19, and Madison will walk us through that. And that has to do with the postings, also the resubmission of a nomination.
Yeah, absolutely. So this ordinance I have put together from comments from council as well as examining staff's process. As I've stated before in the last ordinance that y'all reviewed, this is, in the grand scheme of things, a fairly young piece of the code. And we knew that it would be a working document, and after implementing it for a year and a half, 2 years so far, we have certainly received some feedback that we weren't really able to address in the previous ordinance, but we are hoping to address in this one. And so one of the main things that I would like to draw attention to is that when a nomination is denied, currently the way the code reads is that unless a nomination application submitted is substantially different from the nomination application that was denied, then that denial is good for 1 year. However, that's kind of a up for interpretation section of code, given that what constitutes is significantly different. We don't really have any kind of process put in place to, okay, they made 1 point different. Is that significant? They made 3. Okay, that should be significant, but what happens if they could have made 5? So in order to help provide more certainty to the public and property owners and staff and commission and council, staff has instead added a completely new section of code to essentially say, hey, we've received this nomination application. Anybody who wants to provide supplemental material, please do so now. And then all of that material will be presented to the HPC. And that is in direct correlation to the fact that I have changed the 1 year denial period to now no longer say, hey, unless a nomination application is substantially different. So that way everybody can get in all of their information up front. It's all considered by the HPC, and that way somebody doesn't get denied and then somebody else comes in and applies for their property to be designated as historic, 3 months later because they have a significantly different nomination application, which, as I said, we don't really have criteria for what significantly different means, and so that would be kind of tough to enforce from the property owner saying, hey, this doesn't seem significantly different to me, so why are we going through this process again, versus, the applicant saying, well, it's significantly different to me because I made 2 different points than what would the original application made. And on top of that, given that most development projects from start to finish, whether it's an addition, a new construction, whatever it is, they rarely take less than a year. So you get your denial and then you tell your architect to, hey, go ahead, we're good. And then by the time you get to DRB, yeah, that might be within the year period, but then you get to building permit and that's outside of that year. And so we determined to lengthen that to 5 years, given that if all of the nomination information wasn't given up front, then what can really change in between 1 year and 5 years? I mean, in the grand scheme of things, that is not that long, I know, because I just celebrated 4 years with the town and it feels like it was yesterday when I started. So that is one of the biggest changes that I have made within this ordinance. The second, more minor, but I feel very relevant change is that, as you're aware, whenever we get our new pre-permit, what I'm calling our pre-permit, our 2-week stay, we post those to the website, send out an e-blast, it gets forwarded to y'all, and then a sign is posted to the property. However, even though we have posted to the website since the inception of this section of code, we haven't, that's not actually codified. The code only requires a posting to the property and the application be forwarded to the HBC. And so in efforts to be more transparent with the public and in order to codify what we're already doing, I have added places for posting to the website, send out an e-blast, as well as the posting boxes on either side of town hall, so that, you know, people who don't necessarily get our e-blasts, if they're walking by the post office, as many people do, they can see that in those posting boxes. And as part of that section of code for the 2-week stay, again, trying to give people more certainty with what they're doing. If nobody nominates that property within the 14-day or 2-week period, then they do not have to go through this 2-week stay process for 5 years, in line with the other 5 years. I was trying to make them consistent, unless they apply for demolition, at which point that kind of overrides this and they have to go through the 2-week stay process again. So that is, I'm sure, what was a very convoluted explanation of this ordinance that kind of encompasses several different things. So I am certainly available for questions if anybody has them.
Okay, great. Go ahead, Tracy.
I have a question. I understand this and it makes sense to me. I'm just wondering, did you run this by, let's say, the town attorney? I'm just curious, you know.
It is in the
if
town
it's-
attorney's hands now.
It is, okay.
Michelle and I worked on this, kind of brainstormed what to put together based on council comments, and our own experiences. However, I've asked for comments from the town attorney prior to, the next council meeting.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Well, I would like to comment that I think it's a very astute move on staff's part to make these changes, and I applaud your efforts. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would echo that. I do have a clarifying question though, and it really goes to that last piece when you were given the example. So if I understand it right, so if property A, they want to do some changes to the windows or whatever, some remodel job, and so then there's a notice posted and no one nominates. But then later they wanted to come back and do a second renovation. Do they have to, and it was within 5 years, do they have to refile? In other words, is it tied to the notice and the notice running out? Or is it tied to actually a nomination?
If they have already gone through the 2-week stay period, and it is within that 5 years afterwards, unless they are submitting for a demolition permit application, then they do not have to go through the 2-week stay again.
Okay, great. So if the nomination goes, if the 2-week waiting period goes and there's no nomination, it's the same result as a nomination being denied in effect, and you get 5 years.
I mean, anybody can certainly go through and nominate the property in that 5 years. That's certainly not precluding that portion of it. We're just saying that nobody has to advertise essentially that they're doing these renovations for the 5 years after the 2-week stay. But certainly if somebody, decided to, do some research or whatever and decided to want to submit that nomination application, this ordinance does not preclude that.
Okay.
And I just want to clarify, you said that if they do apply for a demolition permit, then
Then the 2-week
that
stay,
overrides it.
again,
Yeah, that goes.
they'd have to post to the property, we'd send out an e-blast, post to the website, etc. And regardless of where they were at in those 5 years, so that, because just in case somebody was just like, it wasn't that big of a deal when they were just changing windows or doing a re-roof or something like that, but now that somebody's trying to demolish it, yeah, maybe this is kind of more important, and that will notify everybody of what's going on.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? I think this is great.
I have a question. If a property is nominated and council denies the nomination and
Mhm.
chooses that it's not, it goes into a 5-year period. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And then at that point, if someone comes in and wants to demolish a building, does it start it over again?
No, because the nomination has already been denied. So
Okay.
anything done within that 5-year period does not require any more governmental red tape than is usual with, you know, a demolition permit or a DRB application or however it is.
Good. I think that
That's
clears
good.
the hurdles. Thank you.
Of course.
So Madison, if I may ask, so if,
Hold on just a second. We'll get to some public comment in just a second.
I'm sorry, okay.
Oh, that's okay. I want to
Okay.
make sure we get all the commissioners' comments first. And that might be it, by the way. Are there any other questions? Kenneth, you got anything on the line?
Oh, let's see. Kenneth is no longer with us.
Okay, we lost Kenneth. Okay.
Last Kenneth.
Madison, can we open up for public comment at this time?
Absolutely.
Okay, go ahead, David.
So if, you know, it's nominated, if in the event it is denied by the council, that would mean that we could demo it anytime thereafter, like it will never, the clock will never start over again in 4 years or 6 years or 8 years. Like once it's denied, is it in the books, or if it's denied, I should say, it's in the books and it can't ever experience another 2-week stay?
No, if a nomination for a historical designation is denied by council, then you have 5 years before it can be nominated again.
Okay, thank you. Got it.
Yeah.
One of the things that I like about this is the fact that you typically will have a change of council and probably a change of HPC, which allows for the continuation of a change of degree of interest in such preservation. So I think that the 5-year time period is spot on. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Yeah.
And Ken, we do have a member of the public in the audience who would like to speak.
Okay. Is somebody there?
Guess who?
Oh, hello, Lynn.
Oops.
Welcome.
Hi. Lynn Teach, 253 Pine Street. Since this is the first public meeting, I know that this is being discussed at. I question why it's been chosen, and maybe I'm incorrect, but it sounded like there would only be one presentation at council, not two of this ordinance.
Oh, no, we can't affect that. Ordinances are always 2 readings.
Okay, that was just a question. And I assume it was council that this wasn't a public discussion, so that chose the 5 years, not like 2 years or 3 years or 4 years.
The years or the amount of time, that was something that staff picked, that didn't come from council.
Just seems a little long to me, being that we're just getting this up and rolling. But, and I don't have a problem with it if it's like the first owner, but what if midway, say a person goes to get this and starts building and then something happens and they can't finish and they put the building up for sale? Does this transfer to the new owner?
Yeah, it runs with the property, not the owner.
It runs with the property, not the owner. Okay. And have we in any way looked at other towns and how they handle this, or asked Dr. Flewelling?
I have not asked Dr. Flewelling. I looked at a couple of towns and didn't see that they had done something similar to this, so I don't have an answer.
There wasn't anything in their policies. Okay, so there is two. If an owner were to come in themselves and say, I want to put my house up for historical.
You mean after it had been denied by council?
No, just they came in and go, I'm interested in putting my house up for historical.
Oh, yeah, that can happen at any time.
That can happen at any time. The 5 year will not. And it would if council were to deny it. And then
council
they
were to-
want it to come back before the 5 years.
If council were to deny it, if in this example, it had been a previous owner and the property sold, the new owner wanted to designate their property as historic, I don't know that we would stop somebody from designating their own, wanting to nominate their own property as historic. Because at that point, we are not affecting their property rights, they are affecting their own property rights. Or I say we, anybody else in the public is not affecting their property rights, they are affecting their
They're
own
affecting it themselves, yeah.
So I wouldn't say, I don't think the town would say, no, sorry, even though you own the property, we're not gonna let you do this because it was denied 2.5 years ago. But on the other hand, if it was denied 2.5 years ago, council obviously had a reason to deny it. Or HPC forwarded a recommendation for denial because it didn't meet criteria, or the argument presented wasn't sound enough in order to add this to the historic register. So while I say that the town, I don't think would not allow the property owner to nominate their own property, they would certainly have to present likely a stronger argument or a different argument or something, because council's already denied this before, so why should they approve it now?
Well, kind of like Larry said, over the years, you'll have changes in council and changes on HPC.
Yep.
And so that was part of the thinking in that. Perhaps it would come back before another council and they'd go for it,
That's very possible.
you know. But you're saying that currently in this case, it relates the same way. In other words, if I were to say, I want to nominate my house and council said I couldn't, I would have to wait 5 more years. Possibly.
I guess theoretically, if you were the one who nominated yourself to begin with and council said nope, then yeah, probably have to wait 5 years to nominate yourself again.
Yeah, I don't think I would see that happening if someone's,
Yeah, can't
if the
imagine.
owner wants.
The owner wants to go ahead with it, right.
It's, yeah, usually.
Well, I guess the only thing I'd say is I'd like to see you consider maybe a year or two less than 5 years. But that's not my choice. Because we're really trying to get this rolling and learn with it. And I think the more often we have these things come before us, the better way it is to learn them. But I do want to thank you very much for adding the boxes on the town hall, for letting people know about it. And I think that was it. And to know that we've got a 2-meeting ordinance for council, because that gives the public to see it before council and then come back if they have any other questions. Thanks, Madison.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you, Ken.
Harry, did you have your hand up?
Yes, in relation to the comment
Let's,
that, Lynn-
let's close out public comment. I know I forgot to do that. Sorry, go ahead, Larry.
or is public comment closed?
Oh, the account's closed.
And now we're just members commenting. Is that right?
Yeah.
So I have some concern around the language of what Lynn just used regarding we're trying to get this thing rolling, which to me means we're trying to get the movement towards the HPC and nomination of properties. And from the last nomination, which came from the town staff, I felt that was a nudge outside of my comfort zone that we were trying to get this thing rolling, if that's the terminology. The mayor had mentioned, it just seemed like the Historic Preservation Commission was not going anywhere. So when we took it upon ourselves as a community to nominate 2 properties as being historic, we were doing it in the realization that every posted sign that had come up, nothing had been nominated. And to me, that is echoing what the community wants, as opposed to what we are influencing. And because of that, I get concerns around members of the HPC making nominations. And I am very much concerned about the town itself making nominations. I feel like it goes against the natural process of the procedures that we had put in place. And as an HPC member, I would be doing myself a disservice by not letting it be known what my thoughts are. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry.
It's been open before.
I'd like to ask a question, Madison, actually sort of related to Lynn's comments and Larry's comments, but when you started out on discussing this amendment, you mentioned it was from some feedback, and I believe you said from council, or certainly council gave you feedback among other feedback you might have gotten. Could you elaborate a little bit on any directional feedback that you guys got from council, or any feedback on that would be helpful to us in regards to how we're supposed to operate moving forward?
Of course. So obviously I'm not speaking for the whole council. This was a comment made by 1 or 2 different council members.
Okay.
So not even the majority, but it was enough to, spur staff on to create this ordinance to give before you and then ultimately council. So for example, Councilmember Gothelf, Eric, has, a year ago, he was undergoing a partial re-roof project. And so he went under the 2-week stay for that. And then about 3 weeks after that, I think he was affecting something with either his garage or his windows or some other exterior project that required a permit. And so he had to undergo a second 2-week stay. And then if you'll remember, he is, I guess, finishing the roof project. And so he needed to apply for a third one, which went to y'all last week sometime. So that's 3 different 2-week stays that have happened for this one individual within the span of about a year. And so in the interest of, yes, we do want to, historic preservation has been deemed by the community to be an important item. However, when it's minor things like this, we're not trying to demolish the property at all. We're just trying to get building permits in order to help spruce up our property. Having 3 different 2-week stays within the span of a year is kind of cumbersome. And obviously, not everybody will experience that. Most people don't go for 3 different building permits within the span of a year, but obviously it can happen, as it has with Councilman Gothelf. So that was the impetus for trying to, one, make it good, make one posting good for a while.
Right.
And then I believe in discussion with the mayor, there has been some concern that a year, as I kind of started out my presentation with, a whole project is rarely just a year long from start to finish. Like what is public facing might be a year long, but trying for a property owner to employ an architect, etc., all the way through to building permit, that is rarely a year long, just with how busy everybody is in this valley in general. And so I believe Michelle had a conversation with the mayor, and he was in favor of lengthening the time of that denial application denial of a nomination application in order to give people a little bit more certainty.
Okay, thank you.
And Ken, we have a member of the public who would like to speak again. It is up to you whether or not you open public comment.
I'd like
Yes,
to.
we'll open public comment.
Can I just make never mind.
Let's just open up the public
Okay,
comment, and then we'll
gotcha.
close it, and then we'll move on.
I'd like to just respond quickly to Larry's comment because he kind of put words in my mouth. I did not mean get the ball rolling by increasing. I meant by learning through this process, by changing the ordinance for the future, like we keep talking about it being a fluid ordinance. And by getting the ball rolling, let's see how it works. Let's see how this functions, not by increasing the other. And the other question was, the new survey results are out. 75% of the people who responded to the survey are happy greatly approve what historic preservation is doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Is there any other public comment? If not, we'll go ahead and close out public comment and go back to Tracy. Go ahead, Tracy.
Hi. I just want to respond as well, because I believe that, there's different philosophies of the role of government. And I want to just remind everybody that the impetus for establishing this commission was because all of a sudden a building was gone and there was a lot of uproar. Just because no one necessarily nominated properties out of the blue without an impetus like a demolition permit doesn't mean that government can't fulfill the the section 19 of the Minturn Code and do what we believe, or maybe not we, but they believe that that's in the best interest of the town, given the multiple surveys. And people get apathetic, they get busy, they get time goes by and you're like, how did that happen? And a building goes down. But I personally want to say that I don't find any problem with the fact that the government nominates property. I mean, we went to all this trouble to design a code, and I'm just saying this. I mean, I'm not right and you're not wrong. I'm just adding another point of view on kind of the role of government. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. Any other comments, questions on the proposed amendment?
I'd just like to say my heart's always torn between saving everything and then the practicalities of being in the building industry. So I've always said I like to streamline the process, and especially the government process that burdens people when they're trying to redevelop. So with in recognition to Eric's comments of his process last year, I totally see his situation, and I think this is great that will help rectify future, because if I was in his shoes, I would be like, I gotta do this again and again. And so I do recognize that, and I did also want the postings just to be more visible, and just because we are very busy and things do get away from us, and we might not save everything we want to, but at least now we have an option that we never had before. So I'm still grateful for all this, and even if nothing gets nominated as much as we want, at least hopefully the buildings that we really want to save aren't going to get torn down in the same light. So I think it's a pretty good balance, and we have options now, which we never did before. So I'm pretty happy with it.
Thanks, Kelly. Let's see, we don't have Kenneth. Everybody has spoken. I think the clarity to the property owner is great, and the increase in notification is just wonderful. And I'm glad we're being proactive on it. We have an ordinance, an amendment in front of us. Is there a motion on that amendment that anyone would like to make? And remembering it's covering both topics. All right, I'll make a motion for the approval of the amendment as presented in today's meeting.
Second.
I'll second it.
Okay, Larry, second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. The next item we have on the agenda is discussion direction item. And Madison, we've got the historic preservation process.
Yes. So, as detailed in my memo, if someone goes through the full extent of the historic preservation process and everything that goes wrong goes wrong, and then you're looking at 6 different applications. You have the 2-week pre-permit stay application. You have the nomination process, presumably by somebody else, but could be the property owner. Then if that's approved at council, the nomination is approved at council, and the property owner still wants to do whatever it is that kicked off this pre-permit, which in my flow chart was a remodel, an exterior remodel example. If the nomination is approved and it's historically designated and they still want to go through whatever it is they're trying to do, in this case an exterior remodel, they'll need to apply for a certificate of appropriateness. If the certificate of appropriateness is denied, then they can apply for an exemption process. And if that exemption process is approved, then they go to DRB, and then after DRB, building permit. So all in total, 6 different processes to get to a remodel. So staff is cognizant that that's a lot.
Mhm.
And it is difficult to show that on a flyer, as was requested at the last HPC meeting, in order to hopefully help show the public that it's not that hard of a process. But you know, when you put it into a flow chart like this, it does look like kind of a hard process. So it is staff's hope, and we're not expecting a decision tonight. However, we're hoping to get some feedback today that we can hopefully, continue a discussion of how to make this process easier. One of the things that Michelle and I kind of brainstormed earlier today is that, if they're not affecting if they wanted to build an addition on the back of a historically designated house and they're only affecting the rear quarter of the structure, then maybe that doesn't need a certificate of appropriateness because the front's staying the same, what's visible from the street is staying the same, but they'll still be able to, utilize the back of their lot. That was just an idea that I'm throwing out there as a way to kind of, okay, it's been historically designated, but as long as you're not touching the front 3/4, the front 2/3, the front half, whatever it is, if that's even the direction y'all take, then you can bypass the certificate of appropriateness and or exemption process, and you can go straight to DRB and building permit. So hopefully that provides a little bit more, again, kind of with the ordinance that that y'all just recommended approval of, provides a little bit more certainty to people who do have a historically designated structure. If they have room to build an addition, if they're not affecting the front facade or the front, again, half, 3/4, whatever, then they can still do what they like with their property without having to go to HPC and then council and then HPC and then council and then planning commission and then council. So that, because it's a lot. So as I said, I'm not necessarily looking for cut and dried, here's the direction we're going. Like, if you want to give me direction tonight to do whatever, that's awesome. But I am very aware that I'm kind of springing this discussion on y'all, and that this might more be an educational night with some discussion to be continued at a future meeting.
Well, I'd like to just comment that anything that we can do to streamline the process. I mean, I think this was a great exercise to do. I'm looking at this flow chart right now on my phone, and that flow chart says it all. So anything we can do to streamline. I'm a little bit concerned about trying to give you too much direction because I think the best direction would be to, from my perspective, would be to research what other communities have done and what's working. And Dr. Llewellyn could be a resource, just from my perspective, because, when you say, well, we can just do an addition on the back, I mean, that sounds right. And I want to say yes, but I don't know what I don't know, because I'm not doing this kind of stuff regularly. And I have seen some things that, in my opinion, shouldn't have gotten built before on the backs of historic buildings before. So, I just don't know. But I do think anything that we can do to streamline would be well received by this commission, I believe. Okay. Others have comments? Larry, Kelly? Go ahead, Larry.
Just to kind of reiterate if you look at the flow chart, within a 2-week stay, if it's not nominated, it's a pretty simple process.
Mm-hmm.
It's when things get nominated, it becomes more complex. And that's where I like the public process of going through the posting and letting people know. And that's where I have concerns about our board members who may have preconceived desires to have things be historically nominated because it's just something that they're passionate about, and not giving the public a chance to make that decision, because it throws it into a whole lot more of a flow chart. So that's why I like the process that we have set up that allows the public to make a decision on whether they want to nominate something or not, as opposed to a planning and zoning or a HPC member. Because I feel like those folks are a little bit biased towards one direction or another.
Okay, thank you, Larry. Others have comments? Tracy? Kelly?
I'm always in favor of streamlining. So like a minor alteration, I'm not as worried, but how do you define that is the hard part, which this town is full of gray area, and that would be the tricky part on, obviously. And I would personally have to think about it for a while to deem what percentage, or, I mean, you could do a lot of damage quickly, but yeah, is it a evaluation, a square footage, or, I mean, it would be hard to, I'm not quite sure how to categorize that, but I am in favor of the theory behind it.
Okay.
But yeah, just I would have to, I would be curious to see if other people do. Oh God, I mean, it would almost, I mean, a square, I'd almost want to go with a percentage of square footage, or.
My worry is when I started thinking through, okay, if you're affecting, I don't know, 300 square feet, then you have to come in. Well, what happens if it's a very small historic house, like the Myers barn, for example? That's, I don't know how big that is. I don't think it's 300 square feet. It might be, who knows? But if something of that size, if we said, okay, you can affect 300 square feet, otherwise you need to come into the HBC. Well, if the structure itself is only like 500 square feet, then at that point you've, compromised the integrity of pretty much the entire structure. And is it really historic once 60% of it has been?
I think it would almost have to be a percentage.
That's why I was mentioning the words, quarter, third, because at that point it shifts to the size of the structure. And yeah, that might mean that a larger structure, they might get a more leeway room, but it means that those smaller structures won't be annihilated if we set like a hard and fast square footage line. That was my reasoning behind that.
The only comment I would make on that is, I think we should crash test that with, talking with some folks that maybe have been at this a little longer. I think you're doing that, Madison, is my suspicion. And I think we could probably learn from some of those folks, Dr. Fluellen and others.
I can certainly reach out.
They're not going to have all the answers. At some point, we just need to make decisions, but, seems like we ought to do what we can to learn what we can.
Absolutely. And as I said, I anticipated this to be an educational night.
Yep.
And I certainly did not expect to walk out of here tonight with hard and fast direction and answers to then implement.
Madison and Ken,
David, I saw you had your hand up. Can we take public discussion at this point, Madison?
That is up to you.
I
Okay,
wanted
why don't we open it up for some public comment. Go ahead, David.
Larry, go ahead, sir, and I'll follow you.
Oh,
all right, thank you. What we're working on is, as Mike Gallagher used to say, we're working on one side of the equation. And when I think about the building that was torn down, and some folks were concerned and upset about it, it makes sense. We have a relationship with a structure. But when I, in hindsight, look at what Spencer and Stephanie have drawn up with their architect and their creation, they're about to build something that's going to be outstanding for our community. And many of the things that we're concerned about and talking about, I personally believe that the design, planning and zoning, the design review board is perfectly capable of handling this. We have a community plan. We have a very talented planning and zoning commission, and we all know that we're looking for structures to come in that match the community. It's that they're planting a new flower in the Garden of Minturn, right? So I have a lot of faith in the creativity and the talents and the progressiveness of people. And so when we get caught up on working this other side of the equation, it's really hard. And I would just, suggest that we have a very talented design review process. We have a very talented staff. And I don't know that we have to have overkill here. So that's my point of view.
thanks, Larry. Tracy, we'll come to you just a second, David.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'd just like to comment on the flow chart and just acknowledge that I don't really, at this juncture, have any suggestions, just because I need to really think about it a little bit more. I mean, there's a lot of pieces here, and I'm not really well versed in the actual zoning aspect of it. The other thing I'd like to say is that in regards to this commission, we took an oath to protect what we deem as properties that are significant, that add to the historic character of the town. And I feel like I'm a little bit attacked here. And I'd like to, on a second note, just say, one, I nominated that as a private citizen. I've lived here since 2005, and I've watched the town change even in that small amount of time. I'm also aware that there's going to be an incredible amount of change on the horizon that's been approved, and our town will likely, I don't know what the future actually holds, change in a significant way in the near future. I also want to say that I don't believe I usurped anybody's right to nominating that property. I did wait until the last minute to actually submit it. And the third thing I'd like to say is that there is nothing in the statutes that says that someone on this commission cannot designate a property. So I will leave it at that. Thank you.
You know, just as a matter of record, Woody, myself, and Kelly nominated the Myers Building, just so everybody remembers that. But thank you for your comments, Tracy. Let's go to, we're opened up for public comment. David?
Thank you, Ken. I just had a question on the flow chart. So if the nomination was approved, it would then go for application for certificate of appropriateness.
Mhm.
And then it would go to the HPC, and the HPC would essentially pick one of the three.
One of the three? What do you?
One of the three options of relocating, remodeling with alterations, or demolish. Is that kind of the
No, so whoever, if their nomination is approved and they want to apply for a certificate of appropriateness, they would apply to remodel, relocate, or demolish. The HPC does not choose. That would be whatever the property owner was applying for.
okay, so we apply for one of those, got it. And then the HPC would hear it, right?
Yep.
And okay. And then it would go to the town council.
Yes.
So okay, got it. And then, so Madison, essentially, that this is a 6-month process, is if I heard that correctly earlier. Is that correct?
I certainly didn't put any kind of timeline on this. However, based on, the amount of applications involved, any kind of review time, depending on how public notice requirements fall, it can certainly add up to a fairly lengthy process.
Okay. We don't have a time frame though, really, on how long that would take. It could be 3 months or a year, or even.
Right, so if a nomination is approved at council and somebody would still like to apply for a certificate of appropriateness for whatever, remodel, relocation, demolition, it would be up to them how quickly they could get that application to us. And then, as I said, there are public notice requirements. So, for an example, one of the reasons why everything kind of happened so quickly with the nomination for 478 Eagle River Street is that the nomination was submitted, and then the deadline to get on to this meeting was 2 days later. And so I was just like, oh, okay, I need to start moving very quickly to try and get this onto the next agenda. Otherwise, the property owner, you would have to wait until June. And obviously, we've since discussed that would actually have worked out better for you. But in efforts to try and get the process moving faster, then within those 2 days, public notice was put together. Now, if the submission of the nomination application had happened within that public notice period, like if it had happened a day after public notice would have had to gone out, then there would have been no choice. That would have had to wait until the June meeting. And so if you had wanted to get on to the May meeting, then at that point, timing wise, it just wouldn't have worked out and you would be waiting another month. So, that's why I was just like, there's a ton of different factors that play into how long a process takes.
Sure. Okay. Totally understand. Thank you.
Of course. Lynn would like to speak as well. David, if you are done with your public comment.
I am. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, David. Yeah, go ahead, Lynn.
Thank you, Ken. 253 Pine Street, Lynn Teach. I just want to agree with Tracy. And from my understanding, when this commission was developed, I was told anybody in this town can apply for it. The fact that you're applying for it doesn't make the difference. What applies for it is the proof that you have that you want to save that building and how the commission handles it. Just because you put an application in doesn't mean you're preferring. There are people who, I've been on boards enough to know that there's always going to be a yes and a no person on that board. And it may not be the same person the same time. You work through that. You learn how to make it work amongst yourselves. And everybody in this town, being that this is everybody's town, should have a right to say, hey, let's take a look at this house, or hey, take a look at that house. Some people may do it more than once, some may never do it. That's just the way it works. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Why don't we close out public comment? I'd like to make just a comment, and then we'll see if there's any others. But, last meeting we talked about, we might need to tighten the coordination between town council and HPC activities, because we felt like some of the feedback we were getting was surprising to us. It certainly was surprising to me that council might have had, I'm not putting words in the mouth, but might have preferred that we nominated the two buildings that we considered last meeting. And so I don't know the best way to do this, Madison. I'm thinking when I get back to town, maybe I just sit with the mayor or something, but I feel like we need to get some informal feedback and direction from council. I think it would be very helpful, and I think it's appropriate because we've been operating for a while. It's time to recheck in and make sure we're heading the right direction and that we're meeting expectation, et cetera. So I would just like to make that comment. And my request, Madison, would be if you or Michelle have ideas about how best to do that, if it's better informal and I could just meet as the chair, or if we should formalize it in some way. I think it's a missing right now for our commission.
Yes,
Larry?
I can certainly work with Michelle to do that.
Okay, and I think it would be helpful. And Larry, I see your hand back up, or is that old? Okay. All right, are there any other comments? All right, why don't we close out
Oh, I'm sorry. I had a comment on this, or,
on the direction, on the item we're discussing, which is the process.
okay, I don't have a comment.
Okay, all right.
I would like
Yeah,
just
go
to
ahead.
say about the flow chart.
Sure.
Just with David's comments, I think it might. I mean, I know there's variations because of all godzillion different reasons why things don't always happen in a timely fashion, but it might be good and really benefit an outsider to the process and a property owner if we did add time. You started with the 2-week stay there, and it might be good to say in the best case scenario what the dates would be, and it might stir comments on people to add them to the flow chart. Say this is a 2-week period,
Right.
or at least break it down into like this is a 2-week period, maybe not the whole process, and something might disturb that and something might get delayed, but in a best case scenario.
I can certainly.
Because I just think I'm putting myself into David's, shoes, and it's, I think it's important to know.
Yeah.
What am I looking at? A year, 3 years, 4 years, 3 weeks, but just to get an idea of best case scenario. To me, a flow chart makes sense if it has a time pattern to it.
Absolutely. If I bring that back with dates for a best case scenario, it will have to be with the understanding that a lot of assumptions will need to be made in order to give that.
Yeah,
best case.
and it would have to have a little asterisk.
Right, exactly. Asterisk next to each
This town,
date.
everything has an asterisk on
Yes.
it, but it would just be, a basic outline of what could happen.
I'd like to tag on to Kelly's comment and just maybe take it up a little bit in elevation. I think the way we got here was at our last meeting, we talked about we really need some kind of a pamphlet or something that we can give to property owners. I think we should continue on that quest and not give up on it. And maybe a flow chart is part of it. And maybe as part of the pamphlet, you have a typical process or something like that, Madison. But I think we should, I'd like to continue to request that you guys put your heads together about how we can drive clarity and streamline this. And and let's iterate on it as we go through these meetings. Tracy, go ahead.
I'd like to tag on you and then just go back to the flow chart for a second.
Sure.
I think that's a wonderful idea, and I wouldn't mind having, even like a sit down kind of powwow and just kind of hammer out something that we could distribute or have available to people, just so they understand it better, and like that elevator speech, but in a easy to look pamphlet form. I think it would be really helpful. And I do think that would take some time to really clarify and distill down, what we want to communicate and what's vital to communicate. If that's something that would occur outside of meetings, I'd be happy to be on that subcommittee, whatever. Just want to say that. And then the other thing I'd like to say is that we always talk about how, well, we don't. Some people talk about how arduous this is. And, I'm not a proponent of red tape, but I also want to say that if things are too easy, we could lose them more easily. So maybe it's not terrible to have a process, I actually don't think that this is as arduous as it could be in another town. Like, I lived in Boulder for a long time, and that's just the other side of the coin. I'm just throwing out there. I mean, that's
Okay.
all. I mean, maybe there's a reason. Maybe you have a process so that it's not rushed through, so we don't, everybody has a chance for their input, because some of these decisions are important, and others might not be, it might be, more, the size of the add-on, whatever, but in the end, maybe this isn't terrible. I don't know. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Any other comments? Yeah, go ahead, Larry.
I would like to add on to what Kelly was saying about putting a timestamp on it. I believe it's more like a range, depending upon when you bring it up within the cycle of the month, because HPC has their own cycle, planning and zoning has their own cycle, and council has their own cycle. So it's a bit of a math equation for Madison to come up with something, but there is a range, and I think it's important. I also feel like it was mentioned by you, Ken, and I think very relevant in considering we're 2 years into this and we have a new council. Is this HPC operating at the direction of the previous council or the current council? Do they think similarly, or is there a difference?
Mhm.
So this process that, to be open-minded to what Tracy was saying, it may be an arduous process, but maybe that's what's needed if that's what the public wants in preservation of a structure. I think I know the council has packets that are extraordinarily thick, and they have turned to us to handle things that they don't really have time to, but I think that they very much care, and we'll find out with the two properties that we nominated when it comes before them. But I do think that it's important to have some sort of a statement of understanding of what this council wants and what this HPC wants. I am coming to the end of my 2-year term, and I will not seek another term on this commission. I would like to express in all sincerity my respect and value for each one of you on this commission. I made no bones about it when the council appointed me to get on this commission that I was opposed to the HPC in general. So I am on here speaking the same truth that I had when we when we first got on. So I would be doing a disservice to myself. And for those who are interested in economic viability, if I were just to kowtow to preserving everything that came up. I recognize on the last meeting with the two buildings that I voted against my heart. I voted against my own conviction by agreeing to nominate those two buildings. And I did it out of the sake of relationship to the very individuals I serve on this commission with, because I respect you and I quietened my own voice and voted to go along with it. But it's not fair to me to do that. I need to be true to myself, and I need to step aside from this commission. And I wish this commission the best in moving forward.
Well, thank you, Larry. You're not going yet, though, are you? When do you when's your official last meeting? May I
I
ask?
believe June is my last meeting.
Okay.
Your term actually goes through July 31st. So
Well,
the last
yes,
meeting,
ma'am.
July 16th.
I'll stick through my term. That's what
All
I
right, well, we're not going to give you the bon voyage speech, but we would just ditto back to you everything you said about us, and we appreciate you. And you do bring a different perspective, and you do it in a respectful way, and so we appreciate that. And
Well,
we'll
thank you. I
give
don't mean to
bon
be a pain in
voyage
the
later.
ass, but thank you.
Sorry, yeah, okay. All right, and then all right, so are we ready to move on from the discussion direction item about process?
If y'all have no further comments, I've taken my direction to reach out to Dr. Lindsay Flelling to see how other communities have handled something like this and bring back additional information at the next meeting.
Okay. And also, if you could, if you and Michelle could give me some feedback about the best way to get some feedback from council.
Yes, I can certainly work with her on that.
Okay, great. All right, well, let's move on to staff reports. There are none, correct?
There are none.
Any Historic Preservation Commission comments generally that haven't been discussed? Yes, go ahead, Larry.
I just want to reiterate how important I think it is that we do exactly what you're after, which is to hear from this council what they're wanting. They just came out of their retreat. They're a new group. And for this commission to serve itself and serve the community, to have that feedback, I think is important. So I don't know what the steps need to be. I heard you just ask Madison to get with Michelle, but I concur 100%.
Yeah, and I'll commit to make sure that that gets done before our next meeting so that I can, whatever form, we'll come back either with an idea about how to get feedback, or I'll come back with feedback to share. Any other comments from the commissioners? Okay, any discussion on future agenda items? Okay, hearing none, I'll look for a motion to adjourn. And before I do that, thank you, David, for showing up today and for your participation. We appreciate it. It's always
Thank
great.
you, Ken.
And
Yeah.
always good to have you.
Thank you all for having me. I appreciate it. We'll see y'all in a month.
Okay, so I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
I'll propose a motion to adjourn.
Okay,
I'll second that.
all right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you, guys. We're adjourned.
Thank
Have a
you.
nice,
Bye, guys.
hope it quits.
Have a good
snowing.
night.